So, how is he going to keep them all safe? He stared into his goblet of nearly black wine. Strictly speaking, it wasn't really his responsibility to keep them safe. No one expected it of him. They clustered under his wings, hoping that, in his own self defense, he would defend them, too, a bit, by accident. But no one had any illusions of his benevolence. Gavarax certainly wouldn't have cared. But Gav did care. He wasn't a good person. He'd realized that by now. He could tell every time the rage pulsed through his body. Good people didn't say the cruelest things that came into their head every time they got frustrated. Good people weren't tempted to set people on fire. Good people probably didn't even turn other people into chickens. Heroes were supposed to be selfless and beautiful and care about saving the world. Alicia clearly hated Fiari, but she'd risked her life to keep Gav from hurting him. And Gav didn't think that he had that in him. He didn't want to wear white and save random strangers and campaign against the forces of evil. Not that anyone would believe him if he tried. He mostly just wanted to not die horribly. He wished he knew why he jumped straight into lashing out in blind rage. Maybe if he understood his own past better, he could figure out how to stop. Even if he did want to be good, he was pretty sure it was too late. People hid their children when he passed by. He had done things, even if he didn't remember them. Terrible things. Sure, he didn't remember killing his valet, but he doubted that it would be much comfort to the grieving family. Alicia's family refused to accept her just for the crime of being insufficiently beautiful. No one was going to accept him. No one ever had before. But that didn't mean he wanted anything else to happen to Garabeetle, or Mayor Terwin, or Orla, or someone, not Terathax, don't think of him, help him, the princess. He liked them. He wanted them to continue to be around in a likable state. Well, maybe not Fiari. Or Serico. He didn't know what that made him. If it wasn't evil enough to be a villain or good enough to be a hero. Confusing. Too selfish to care about people he didn't like, but not selfish enough to effectively protect himself. Another failure, he guessed. Too wishy-washy to choose a side. Maybe that was all right. If he wasn't trying to be good, he didn't have to like or save everybody. But how could he save any of them? He could try to convince the wizards to hold their little convocation somewhere else. Surely there was something that would make his castle too distasteful to be appealing. A nasty outbreak of something terribly catching? A backup of the sewers into the main hall? He couldn't think of anything dire enough that more competent wizards couldn't fix with a roll of their eye and a wave of their hand. They had picked the location for a reason, he was sure. Assignment of ley lines or planets or something. Alignment of ley lines. Or planets or something. Or just because they held him in too much contempt to believe that he could turn his castle into a death trap if the rest of them probably lived into the death trap that the rest of them probably lived in. They wouldn't be easily dissuaded. He set aside the wine and fanned the papers out in front of him once more. Dragon's tears. Something to do with the daughter of a king. The seed of the lesser lords of hell. All clearly meant to summon, or bargain with, or bind a major demon. Most likely one or two more components, unless Zarakonar himself planned not to bring anything. And that would be just like him, Gav thought with a rising giddiness. He probably wouldn't even bring a nice host gift when he came. Thank you notes seemed right out. Was that it? A pile of ingredients in exchange for what? Absolute power? It seemed like a Zarakonar kind of thing. Garabax, too, really. Velvina he wasn't sure of. Zaxus seemed more interested in being left alone to do his experiments than raining hellfire and brimstone on his enemies. But maybe he thought hellfire and brimstone would be a good way to ensure being left alone. Who could follow the thought of process of someone who wanted to sew wings onto the local village girls for aesthetic reasons? Had Zarakonar told them everything? He doubted it. Valvina doubted it too. But how much did it matter? If a more powerful wizard threatened to take over the world and offered you a chance to help and reap the benefits, or just not, well, one could hope a convenient hero would show up in time to stop him. But if choosing between being the conqueror or the conquered, he knew how most dark wizards would choose. He knew, or how most people in general would choose, really. He just didn't have the knowledge he needed. Somewhere, he was sure, there existed a document laying out whatever ritual Zarakonar was feeding them in bits and pieces. It was, he realized, the sort of thing one might try to consult a knowledge demon to learn, especially if one was arrogant enough to think that one could outwit such a creature. It seemed some of Garabax's more inexplicable decisions suddenly did make sense, just not sense that he liked. It all came down to spell components, which he had forgotten. Not in the general sense, but he had specifically forgotten to ask about the flowers when he had talked to the mayor. He considered throwing something, remembering how that had gone last time, and chose to just kick the wall instead. So the only thing he damaged was himself. Then he rubbed at his sore toes, glaring at them all the while. He was terrible at this. No wonder the other wizards had no respect for him. He was useless, and he was going to die horribly in a disaster of his own making. And the worst part was, he was never even going to know why. The mirror was lighting up again. He gave serious thought to just smashing a chair across its surface, but with his luck, that would release a backlash of magical energies and fry him to a crisp. He could pretend not to be there. There was probably some way to tell. He couldn't imagine Zarakonar being willing to call and not get an answer. It might not be Zarakonar. He checked the bottom of the frame. It was Zarakonar. He fantasized briefly about jumping out the window, limping away, and becoming a traveling bard despite no memory of having ever held a lute. He answered the mirror. "It's late," he said. "Keeping daylight hours? How quaint." "I assume you didn't call to be pleasant," Gav said, trying to brazen it out yet again, or unpleasant, as the case may be. "I understand that Aratharno has gotten involved," Zarakonar said, cutting to the point. Aratharno again. "I have it under control." Possibly the biggest lie he had ever spoken, but he didn't need much in the way of memory to know that literally nothing good for him would come from Zarakonar being involved. The other wizard narrowed his eyes. The whites vanished, and his eyes nearly disappeared into his face, visible only from the faint shine of wetness. "Where one hero fails, another springs up in his place. We do not need any interference now." "I took care of one, I can take care of more." "Killing one hero does not mean you can handle a meddler of Arathano's caliber. Sanctimonious bitch obsessed with her own righteousness," said Zarakonar. Gav shifted uncomfortably. Zarakonar sounded all too similar to the little voice in the back of his own head when he had thought about the princess. You couldn't have handled her before you lost your memories. You certainly can't now. The words caught up with him, and he froze. His mind, his body, he was trapped in ice. He couldn't think, he couldn't breathe. Was it a spell? No, it was just his own shock and bowel-watering terror. The edge of Zarakonar's mouth curled up. Did you really think you had hidden that? Adorable. Like a toddler convinced his mother has no idea that he took the cookie. Every muscle in his sternum tightened like a vice around his lungs, making it impossible for them to expand. He tried to suck air through a constricted throat, betrayed by his mind, now betrayed by his body. What if his heart stopped? Could your heart stop from sheer panic? Pathetic. Zarakonar leaned back and glanced to the side, already bored with Gav's distress. Briefly freed from Zarakonar's direct gaze, Gav managed to suck in a lungful of air. His head swam and the room spun around him. And you had thought you were so clever, too, I'm sure, digging up that summoning ritual, a way to find out more than I had told you. Did you ever think to question how easily you found Estragrath's name? Ah, of course, how insensitive of me. You don't remember. He managed to choke out. He had underestimated Garavax's arrogance and his stupidity. Zarakonar must have laughed himself sick as Garavax eagerly rushed into the trap. But Zarakonar's attention was already focused on something else more interesting than gloating. Next to him sat a small urn, no taller than a hand's width, unadorned. The other wizard unscrewed the cap easily with one hand and set it aside. He scooped a bit of dark gray powder out and let it trickle through his fingers. Ah, I see. You did question it. You just chose to go through with the ritual anyway because you assumed you were clever enough to handle Estragoth. Smarter than I'd given you credit for, but not as smart as you thought you were. And so Zarakonar had neatly diffused whatever small threat Garavax had represented, while keeping a helpless Patsy to do his bidding. Gav watched him continue to swirl the grains, panic giving way to a more deep-seated dread. Are those your memories? Yes. Zarakonar smiled at him, his teeth gleaming. You seem to have a habit of thinking that you can think for yourself. Like the time you... Perhaps we'll discuss that later. It needs to stop. If you behave yourself and follow instructions, perhaps you can be trusted to have these back. Otherwise... He raised a finger, a few grains clinging. His tongue flashed out, obscenely pink. Ah, your first kiss. How lucky for me. You'll miss that one, I think. Not that it was much to gloat over. She certainly didn't seem to enjoy the experience. But either way, it's mine now. Gav's eyes were locked on that finger. I doubt I'll bother consuming the rest, Zarakonar continued. You've had a little sad life with a little sad mind. I'll most likely burn them, or in the extremely unlikely case that you were to manage to thwart me, well, then I suppose you just will never find them. He looked up suddenly, straight into Gav's eyes, and Gav found himself pinned to his chair by sheer force of the other wizard's personality. I'm just checking to see how far we've got. Oh, we're almost to the chapter. It's dinner time and they're all talking over there. You will report any move by Arathano immediately. If you see a single lock of a hero's hair, I want to know the length and shade. And I don't think I need to tell you what will happen if you try to betray me. Gav shook his head silently. Good. Zarakonar leaned back. You may continue to play your little games with the princess, I suppose. Valvina tells me that you're toying with the girl. All well and good, as long as she remains a virgin. I won't have you wrecking our spell components. Gav swallowed with difficulty. If I can't remember, how am I supposed to know? From now on, I decide what you need to know, Zarakonar said, his eyes narrowed once more. And you don't need to know more than that. Mess with her mind all you want, but leave her body alone. One or your memories will be the least of your worries. The mirror winked out. Had he thought once that he could outplay Zarakonar? Or had he been more like Valvina, cooperating lest he be left out? All he really knew was that he was every bit the fool that Zarakonar thought him to be.